Hello, welcome to Unit 2 of PE 551. Today's lecture will be on Common Core as well as establishing the foundations of your curriculum. I would suggest that you review your assignment description for your curriculum design project. This lecture will prove very valuable to you for your planning. Chapter 1, Introduction to Standards-Based Curriculum Development. The main purpose of Chapter 1 is to explain the development of a programmatic philosophy and point out several factors to consider while developing a curriculum. Now, why do you think that I chose to insert pictures of a house? The analogy in the book compares curriculum designing to that of making a house. In order to design a curriculum, you need to first come up with your programmatic philosophy. What is it that you are hoping your students are going to be able to perform or achieve at the end of your program? The same is for a house. You need to have what you in your mind. It is important to remember that there is a significant difference between a physical activity and physical education. Physical activity comes as the result of a person experiencing a great physical education program. Physical activity is the act. Physical education is a means in which we educate people to be physically active. A curriculum is everything that you are hoping or expecting to be able to teach your students. So let's take, for example, that you teach physical education or coach a sporting activity at a junior high school, which would be 6th grade and 7th grade. Your curriculum would be everything that you're going to be teaching that student in 6th grade, as well as everything that you're going to be teaching that student in 7th grade. You should be planning your curriculum as an entire program. So all of the PE teachers at your school should be coming together and designing your curriculum as a team. You should be coming up with a programmatic philosophy. So what is it that your school is trying to accomplish through your physical education curriculum? Now let's break it down even further. Let's say you teach 6th grade physical education. You would have your curriculum written for that entire school year. The curriculum would then be broken down into units. The units would then be broken down into individual lesson plans, so on a daily basis. And then let's build it back up. So you would go from lessons to units to the entire curriculum. You would typically have about 3 to 4 units per school year if we're sticking with the less is more principle. Each unit you could have thematic units, so based upon a particular theme, or you could have a sports related units. So more traditionally, you would see maybe a soccer unit, basketball unit, baseball unit. You could have a dance unit, aquatics units, you name it. Or, like I said, the other thematic units can be staying in streamline with a specific subject matter that's being spoken about in history. So maybe you had a Civil War unit that you were doing in physical education, and then you implemented some more of the Common Core values, which we'll talk about in a minute, to help create a thematic unit in physical education. And then you break down that unit into individual lessons. So the curriculum is very extensive. It goes from lesson planning to unit planning to how all those units fit together into an actual curriculum. Standards-based curriculum is curriculum that is developed by looking at the state standards. Each standard then identifies the skills, knowledge, and disposition that students should demonstrate to meet these standards, and identify activities that will allow students to reach the goals stated within the standards. So, you will see two pictures in front of you. The one on the left with the blue background is the Physical Education Model Content Standards for California Public Schools. We address the NASB standards as well as the California Physical Education Standards in Unit 3, so the next presentation. But this is just to give you a basis of understanding of what standards are. The nice thing about state standards and curriculum standards or specific content standards, which are these, is that it keeps everybody consistent in their teaching. When we explore the physical education model content standards further next week, you will notice that sport is never mentioned within the California PE standards. It's all about skill acquisition and knowledge and disposition of students. So how to cooperatively participate in team play environments, how to lose with dignity, how to win with dignity, how to calculate your heart rate, and the meaning of why it's important to know what a healthy heart rate zone is. So the California PE model content standards are very thorough, and skills are broken down in a scope and sequence manner. So you can see, starting from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, a progression of a certain skill. Coaches can find very valuable as well, because they can then look back at the scope and sequence of the California PE model content standards and pertain it to your specific sport to be able to relate it to a specific sports skill progression that you may need to work on for your team. Again, since your curriculum that you will be designing for this course will be standards-based, you should know where all standards stem from. The NASB standards are the mother, as you would call it, for all physical education content standards. So these are what are recognized nationally. Then California based upon the NASB standards, created the state standards. But each grade level is categorized into 5 categories, which are directly related to the NASB standards. And then there is a subset of skills within each overarching standard. NASB stands for the National Association of Sport and Physical Education. You'll see in the slide that there is a website link for you. This will take you directly to the NASB standards as well as the homepage for AFERD. AFERD is our national organization that all physical educators, coaches, and sports management individuals should be a part of. There is always great information for physical educators, coaches, and sports management individuals that you can relate directly to your field. California has their own chapter of AFERD, which is CAFERD. So it's AFERD that starts with a C for California. Each state has their own chapter of AFERD. The NASB standards were created after the implementation of a document entitled Outcomes of Quality Physical Education. You can find this document on the website link that is given to you in this slide. Here are the NASB standards. There are 5 of them. I want you to look these over, read through them, have a great understanding of them, and then next week we will be exploring the NASB standards as well as the California PE model content standards in much more detail. Now, as you look at these standards, notice that there is a term that has changed. We no longer call a person who is highly physically educated a physically educated individual. It is now referred to as a physically literate individual. This is the newest terminology change to affect the NASB standards. Creating an exceptional physical education curriculum which will lead to lifelong physical activity depends on a lot of planning and assessment. Assessment should be both in the formative and summative forms. So formative means ongoing, monitoring skill progression, where that student is at during that unit, and then summative is how they have completed that unit skill-wise, so the finishing or end result. Regardless of whether you're using formative or summative, it needs to be important that you keep your assessment standard relevant. So, for example, in regards to California Physical Education Model Content Standards, I'm looking at Grade 1 under the heading of Movement Skills. Standard 1.2 states that the child will be able to travel over, under, in front of, behind, and through objects, and over, under, in front of, and behind partners using locomotor skills. Great standard, love this one. But in order to assess it, you would not be having a student be completing a paper pencil test for this. This is something that you are going to have to physically witness the student doing. You will have to do a visual assessment on this student. Now let's look still in grade level 1 under the heading of manipulative skills. I'm looking at standard 2.6, which is explain that the point of release influences the direction of a tossed object and of a thrown object. Now this skill, this standard 2.6 or grade 1 could be information that you assess through a paper pencil assessment. The student can write and explain that the point of the release influences the direction of a tossed object and of a thrown object. You could also assess this with verbal feedback. So you could have the student verbally explain or have them write out an explanation. Either way, your assessment needs to be appropriate for the standard that you are assessing. Planning is the most important component of creating an effective and outstanding physical education curriculum. It takes time and it takes background knowledge. That's what this class is going to help you achieve, is that you're going to be able to plan out a physical education program, a coaching program, a sports management program, an adapted physical education program that is well planned out and meets the needs of your students. It is also going to help create and foster the love of physical activity that they will then carry on throughout the lifespan. That is why activity should be a balance between activities for the present and those for the future. The less is more principle is something that we spoke about a little bit earlier, but also it talks about that this is the principle that is built upon students gaining competency in many activities and even mastering a few. By using the less is more principle, skills are transferable across different units, across different sporting activities, and across different physical activities. So the less is more, so it's really about quality over quantity. The older way of teaching is the exposure curriculum. So throwing out information and hoping that something sticks. Exposure curriculum is the more traditional and multi-activity program. It does not allow for depth of knowledge and transfer. So when you are creating your curriculum for whatever it may be, remember this less is more principle and focus on having your students achieve competency and mastery in the skills that you have laid out for them. The new Common Core approach to teaching is replacing the No Child Left Behind Act. Now, Common Core standards have been written for language arts as well as mathematics. You will find in your resources for Unit 2 there is a PDF file that is entitled Introduction to Common Core. You need to read this PDF file. It will give you a nice overview and understanding of Common Core as it relates to language arts. As a physical educator and a coach and a sports management major, it is important that you know the current terms that are related to and affecting public schools' education system. Now, physical education does not have specific Common Core standards. The reason being is that they have not been created, but it does not mean that physical education is not an important subject matter. What it means is that physical education is already meeting the 4 C's that you see listed here, which is what all Common Core is based upon. 4 C's are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. After reviewing your California PE standards, you will see that this is the basis for all of physical education, and it's what we have already been doing. So being able to say that your physical education lesson or unit and how it relates to the Common Core, this is what you would refer back to, making sure that your lessons hit all 4 of the C's. So again, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. So this would be an example of your teammates or your students or the people that you are facilitating over, making sure that they are getting together as a group or maybe a small group, large group, it's up to you, making sure that they are communicating with one another, that they're working together effectively to achieve a common outcome, so collaboration, that they're critically thinking, so doing strategic thinking. We always are doing this within sport and physical activity, and then they're being creative in the way that they're hoping to achieve this outcome. The 4 C's were based off of the skills for the 21st century learner. So according to all of the large industry CEOs, that these are the main components that they want and expect to see in people that they hire in the future. So it's great that physical education already had these 4 components embedded within our physical education curriculum. Your personal philosophy paper is due week 3, so next week. Your paper needs to be written to include the 5 criteria found in Chapter 2, Figure 2.3, page 31. You are going to develop your own physical education coaching philosophy. This philosophy paper needs to be prepared to include a 2 to 3 page description using APA formatting, explaining the creation and implementation of your philosophy. Those 5 criteria mentioned in Figure 2.3 on page 31 are a philosophy. What are your beliefs about PE and how do they play out in practice? The goods of physical education. So what do you consider to be of most importance in physical education? What skills, knowledge, and behaviors do you want students to achieve before they leave your program? Value orientation. So what are the implications of what you value on student learning and participation? Value orientations have been broken up into 5 different value orientation criteria. These 5 different value orientations are disciplinary mastery, learning process, self-actualization, social responsibility and justice, and ecological integration. Which of these value orientation do you base your teaching strategies off of? It could be all of them, it could be one of them, it could be any amount that you choose. This is you. This is your personal value orientations in regards to teaching or coaching or program planning. Next, you need to create your individual philosophy. So how might this philosophy influence how you interpret the standards? So articulating an individual philosophy is the heading in your book. As individual teachers reflect on what they see as the goods of physical education and identify what they value about the learning process, they need to intentionally develop their own philosophy. This personal philosophy of physical education might serve as a lens through which to view the standards and guide interactions with teaching colleagues about programmatic and curricular designs. This is found on page 34 of Chapter 2 of London Tannenhill. Finally, you will develop a programmatic philosophy. This will be done taking into account the different philosophical approaches of your team members, so meaning the other PE teachers that you teach with at a respective junior high or high school, fellow coaches, as well as fellow team members within a sports management facility. So what is your overall programmatic philosophy for the facility that you work with, your coaching team or coaching group, or the PE teammates and fellow teachers that you work with at your respective junior high or high school? For the purposes of this paper, when you are talking about developing a programmatic philosophy, we want you to approach it from the idealistic point of view that what you would hope that all the other teachers or coaches or sports managers would want to cohesively create as a programmatic philosophy with you. So the individual philosophy would fit into a programmatic philosophy, but a programmatic philosophy is a blend of everyone's individual philosophies in regards to physical education. You will hear scope and sequence mentioned frequently throughout this class and throughout this entire master's degree program. Scope is the big picture of what you're trying to get the students to learn. So your culminating activity. Your sequence would be all the skills that break down that big picture or the big activity that you're trying to get the students to achieve. You could even think about it on a larger scale. So your scope could be compared to your personal philosophy or your programmatic philosophy of your curriculum. And then the sequence is how you are breaking down individually by skill and by lesson, using the backward design of curriculum theory approach in order how to get these people or get your students and your athletes, your coworkers, to achieve up all the way up to your scope that you have established. Now read the rest of Chapter 2. Focus on implications for instruction, including backward design of the curriculum, as well as questions to guide the design of a standards-based curriculum. If you have any questions after reading this chapter, please email me and I will answer them thoroughly for you.